The body has a response to the bacteria.
Yeah, you can think about, so you have a microbiome in your gut, but you also have a microbiome along your skin. So a lot of young, healthy females will have low normal blood pressure in general. And so the concern is that maybe it will drop your blood pressure too low. Whether or not those are truly, there aren't clinical studies to show that those might impact acne, but those are some options that people are considering or discussing.
With a little health and a little wealth and a lot of love, that's a life that we live. Seuss and Scrubs.
Hello, everybody! Welcome to another episode of Seuss and Scrubs. A little health.
A little wealth.
And a lot of love. We didn't lean in that time.
I think I did a little bit.
Oh, you did? Okay. Oh, man. We almost did that. All right. With me is joined by Emily, MD. She's double board certified internal and obesity medicine, and she's exploring functional and aesthetics. Fun fact about Emily, on today's episode, she specifically has struggled with this. So this is a passion topic of hers. Emily is our gut and hormone doctor. So a lot of what we're talking about today will impact that. So to you.
I am joined by my co-host, Mr. Zachary SVP. He's looking very, very handsome today in all navy. And
even my suspenders are navy.
Yes, you can't even see that you're wearing suspenders.
I'm wearing them.
It's an optical,
you best believe I'm
optical illusion.
You ready? Listeners, you ready?
There you go. There's a snap. So Mr. Zachary SVP, he is our finance guy and has managed over $1 billion to date. He has also reached his Coast Fire number, and he will be our MC today. You want to talk about our 30-day challenge?
Yeah. So a 30-day challenge, we talk about acromantia, we talk about walking desk. We're stair stacking those together. So acromantia, we're on our first week or so. So guys, we're going to apologize in advance. We're doing a rapid fire. This is our 4th episode tonight that we have recorded, and we did all the scripting for the past few weeks. We knew March was going to be a difficult month for us because you're starting your job, but also I'm going to Korea and Japan, and we also have another vacation. We do our love vacation, which is we go to St. Patrick's Day with some of our best friends. Sorry, I'm digressing. So yeah, so we're about a week into that. And our walking desk, the journey has been great so far. Last few episodes ago, I guess we'll remind people again. Well, we got one that's 320 pounds.
Yeah, it's a 320-pound weight limit for the walking pads.
Yeah, and so Emily is actually really smart with these things. So just in case we want to switch, obviously I'd probably beat every single weight limit. So she had to get one weight appropriate for me. And I tell her, like, when you date a big guy, you have to, there's a responsibility. I can't scratch my back. There's other things, but you'll never have to worry about reaching up to something. When you're out in public with me, you never feel, you probably feel real safe. Mm-hmm. So anyway, the remote controls can control each other across the house. We talked about that last time, but I was walking on the fastest speed, and all of a sudden it was dying down. So I had to jump off the damn treadmill. I'm in the middle of a conference call. I'm like, oh, what's going on? And I realized, oh crap, it's the
remote controls manage both walking pads.
That's right. So we're trolling each other.
And
so
I had the opposite problem. I was leisurely walking while I was trying to script today's podcast episode, and all of a sudden it just sped up, and I'm almost running, honestly, to try to keep up.
I could see that.
So it's something that we're gonna have to figure out.
Yeah, for sure. Well, actually, another fun fact about you is, you poor thing, you stubbed your toe.
I did.
And so her getting heels and shoes on, and I'm not talking about a stubbed toe. Like, I've stubbed my toe before, but this is like a nail fall off situation. I've never seen anyone stub their toe this bad before. I don't know how anyone just does that.
It's a nail avulsion. I don't know what it was. I was walking in heels when we were at the conference in Miami.
That's right.
And we had to walk a long way because we went out to dinner with friends, and then we walked to another spot that was probably, I don't know, a full mile away. And I think that put a little bit of pressure just with the heels, but I don't think that's what did it. I was trying to pack up our suitcase, and I had just jammed it against the suitcase. I hit it really, really hard, and I felt it as soon it was very painful.
Ouch.
And now it's swollen and black and blue, and even going to the gym and wearing tennis shoes, it feels okay when I'm not wearing shoes, but when I'm wearing shoes, it makes it worse. So
and you have a bandage on it now, so
I do.
We're divulging our inner selves here. That's what we do here. It's a recorded date night. Let's go and cheers.
Cheers.
So the last one for tonight and last one in March.
Last one for a while.
Yeah, this is season 3. So 24 episodes. Can you believe it? I can't believe it. It's been a journey. I've enjoyed every bit of it. Exhausted right now, but I have enjoyed it. All right. So today we're talking about a doctor's approach to battling breakouts. So by the end of this episode, you will understand how your hormones can impact your breakouts, what to do naturally. We believe here at Food is Medicine, we also believe that ensuring that there's natural ways. And so Emily's going to talk more about that. It's something she dealt with herself. And so it was a struggle for sure. So the first segment we have Refactions. I'm going to start it now.
As a cosmetic and medical dermatologist, I treat a lot of adult women. It's probably the biggest sort of demographic in my practice. And I have women constantly coming in their 30s and their 40s and even their 50s being like, listen, why do I still have acne? What can I do about it? I've done antibiotics. I've done retinoids. Like, what else can I do? And spironolactone is often such a great solution for them. For so many women, spironolactone ends up being like, I can't even tell you how many messages I get from patients being like, nothing has worked until I tried spironolactone, or this has changed my life for the better.
Yeah, so
How do you pronounce that? Spironolactone?
Spironolactone.
Okay.
So I will say I was one of those women, and I'm a huge fan of Sam Ellis, Dr. Sam Ellis. She is a board certified dermatologist, and she does both medical dermatology and cosmetic dermatology. And I've followed her for a long time, and she does a great breakdown on spironolactone and hormonal acne in general. She talks about the different treatment options, but I've honestly never had any issues with acne growing up. I never went in that awkward teenage acne phase where I struggled with that as a teenager in high school, but
I did. I had like really weird acne. It was like sandpaper. It wasn't like cystic or bulbous. It was like little beep beep. My dad used to hold me down and squeeze them, and thinking that would work. Oh, we're just gonna get it all out. I'm like, well, that would not work.
Well, I was 30, 31. I was in my early 30s. I was in residency. It was at the start. I was at the end of residency. It was the start of the COVID pandemic, and it took me a while to put 2 and 2 together. But I got the Nexplanon, which is the implant, the birth control implant that you put into your arm, and it's a progestin. It's a type of synthetic hormone that you can place and you can just leave there for a number of years, and it acts as a contraceptive, as a birth control. You don't have to worry about taking pills or anything like that.
All that so dudes don't have to wear a raincoat.
Yeah, thanks.
And
honey.
all that so dudes can not go through.
And I think that was honestly what set me off, but there were a lot of other things that were going on at the same time. We were having to wear masks. I was in residency and then worked in a clinic, and you had to wear masks 24/7. And it continued. It wasn't just a couple of blemishes. It was all over my jawline and was painful and inflammatory and a huge self-esteem issue. And I tried anything and everything.
You did.
And I got the Nexplanon removed.
Yeah, which is not as painful.
Yeah, it's
cut into your arm.
Yeah, you have to cut into and remove it in that way. But even after I had that removed, it didn't make much of a difference at that time. And I tried all kinds of topicals. I did all sorts of research, and nothing worked. And honestly, spironolactone was probably it felt like magic. It was, it doesn't act immediately, but after several weeks, it completely cleared up my acne. And so I was a huge believer. It really made a difference. And I think I did a lot of research, not only before, but after, just to see, because a lot of my patients were having similar issues. And so I really wanted to get to the root of what was causing the problem and help other people as well.
You tell me if this is probing too much, but like, are there any side effects of this? Or we'll talk about that later.
Yeah, we'll talk about it.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll talk about all of the treatments and side effects.
Okay.
That's the main reason for today's episode. So we can talk about both the prescription medications that you can take for acne, but also some of the other options, talk about what causes it, some other lifestyle changes that you can make as well.
Yeah. Okay, cool. So the second segment is Under the Microscope.
Under the microscope.
So for Under the Microscope, we're not going to go too deep in detail because I think a lot of people can get lost in the weeds, but just to get an understanding about acne, what causes it, the different type of bacteria that are associated with acne, and primarily we're focusing on what a lot of people consider hormonal acne in this episode, which another word for hormonal acne is more adult acne. And it's not necessarily the bacteria on the skin that causes the problem. It's more the overproduction of sebum, which is oil from your sebaceous glands, that overproduction can then clog your pores basically, or clog the follicles, and then it can trap bacteria, which can cause an inflammatory response and can cause the symptoms of acne. And so there are a couple different strains of bacteria. We don't really have to know a lot about them, but C. acnes is one, Corynebacterium granulosum is another, and Staph epidermidis. These are the three probably most common bacteria that are thought to be associated. And it's more like these type of bacteria, you can think of them as living on the skin all the time. And for a lot of people, they don't cause problems. But in the situation where you have this excess sebum production, which a lot of times is due to some hormonal imbalances or excess androgen production or some sort of imbalance in those different hormone percentages, that these bacteria can then kind of wreak havoc on the skin and cause some inflammatory responses.
So is bacteria like, do they just, your body fights them from entering their bloodstream? Is that what?
Yeah, you have.
Your body has a response to the bacteria.
Yeah, you can think about, so you have a microbiome in your gut, but you also have a microbiome along your skin. So you have a bunch of bacteria and yeast and viruses that live happily on your skin and don't cause problems.
What do they do there? I don't want them there.
Sometimes they can help with your immunity, and they live as kind of commensal bacteria, so they do have some benefits, but it's when things get out of whack that they start to cause problems.
Gotcha. Well, I do know this. The largest organ in your entire body is your
skin.
It is. So this is probably perfect for this type of episode. I think the largest organ on my body is my skin. I'm just messing with her. All right. So we walked through the under the microscope. Okay. So the first question I have is, you talk about hormonal acne, but apparently there's multiple types of acne. So what is it? How does it differ?
Yeah. So I talked about the hormonal acne, but sometimes you can have different characteristics or that you can tell just based on like looking at a patient or the way that the skin looks. And it sometimes depends on the location of the face. A lot of times if it's more all over and it looks characteristically more like a bacterial infection, it's not necessarily just because of excess sebum production, but it can be more of an infection. And so sometimes you can have certain bacteria that cause infection on the skin. You can have an overgrowth. And sometimes if you have a break in the skin or something else that causes an inflammatory response, whether it's from shaving or certain products that you use, then it gives the bacteria a place to grow and cause problems and cause more of the...
What kind of problems does it cause? If it, like I know your body fights it and it creates this pustule, and it doesn't... Are there white blood cells that kill like the overproduction? Is that basically what it is?
Yeah, you can have the non-inflammatory, where it's just the pustules, the whiteheads, the blackheads, but then you can also have the more of the inflammatory acne, the cystic acne that can be very painful, that can be really red. And the bacterial acne, it appears or it looks more like it's on the surface, and a lot of times if it is more bacterial, then topical antibiotics can help. And then you also have yeast. You can have yeast overgrowth on the skin as well. And so it definitely dictates your treatment. And for a lot of those type of acne or skin irritation or skin rashes, you can treat with a topical and it will be effective. But for what we consider hormonal or adult acne, a lot of times you'll try all different types of topical agents and nothing will work. It's more of something, it's deeper down. You have to figure out a different way to treat.
Yeah. So can you explain how, well, before I jump to the next question, like any other things you want to say about just hormonal acne and like how that implies? I know we did a whole episode of PCOS. I know sometimes the hormonal acne can really be inflamed, but is there anything else you want to say about any other conditions?
Yeah, so we had the PCOS episode,
and that was a heavy hitter
just recently, and we mentioned then that androgen excess can definitely promote that.
Androgen is testosterone, just in case you are new. I'm listening.
And that can definitely promote not only the abnormal hair growth, but it can also cause the typical distribution of acne that we tend to see along the jawline that tends to be a little bit more inflammatory. Right. And so not just the pus, the comedons or the whiteheads or the blackheads, but also the red painful pimples.
Yeah. So if you did stumble upon this based upon PCOS and you have those symptoms, like, hey, I just saw this on YouTube or a podcast or whatever, then we did a whole PCOS episode on that. Mm-hmm. So that was a pretty heavy hitter. All right. So explain the differences of hormone imbalances and how that can contribute acne in women.
Yeah. So with PCOS, we talked about the androgen excess are also other conditions that can contribute. So we probably mentioned in the PCOS episode that there are other conditions, specifically like the congenital adrenal hyperplasia or late onset adrenal hyperplasia, where it can contribute to excess androgens as well, can changes in your cortisol. The other thing to consider is sex hormone binding globulin, which you can consider as kind of a transporter for your hormones, where it's like a car that transports, and this is simplifying things, but a good example would be it transports your testosterone. And for women, it's different from men. Testosterone, there's a very small percentage of testosterone that is circulating free in your blood that's actually active. And everything else is bound to this sex hormone binding globulin. And so in conditions where...
Globulin is the car?
Yes.
But think about the goblin and truck going down the road.
Yeah, and so you can think about the sex hormone binding globulin is like the school bus that's carrying all of the kids that are troublemakers, and they're not, they're contained into that bus and they're not causing problems. But whenever they get off the bus, then they start to wreak havoc. I guess that's how I think about it.
So like my offspring probably will.
Yes, our offspring will probably be troublemakers. So any changes in the transport, if you don't have as much of that transporter, then you have more of that free hormone that's actually causing the end effects. And for women, if your sex hormone binding globulin like suddenly decreases or suddenly increases, it can, and more would be if it suddenly decreases. So if it suddenly decreases, then you have more free testosterone acting on your receptors or your cells. And so there are a lot of things that can contribute to lower sex hormone binding globulin. One of those would be hypothyroidism, so having an underactive thyroid gland. And people who are obese or people who have metabolic syndrome also tend to have lower sex hormone binding globulin. And so there are things that can push you more towards having higher testosterone levels, even if it's just transiently. Even if you get your blood work done and you have the same total testosterone, it might not necessarily impact that free or depict that free testosterone that's causing issues.
Gotcha. So from a conventional medicine perspective, what are some common treatments or medications used to address hormonal acne?
So one of the main ones...
We talked about one in the refactions, right?
Yes, we talked about spironolactone, which spironolactone is... And I think we talked about this some in the PCOS episode. So it initially was a medication for blood pressure and heart health, and we still use it for those indications. That's what it was initially created for. It's been around for, 50, 60 years. So it's a very old medication. But we also found, so it's a diuretic, it's a potassium sparing diuretic. So it helps from a heart and a blood pressure perspective by helping you get rid of excess fluid.
Is that what a diuretic is?
Yes. So a diuretic basically makes you pee out excess fluid.
Gotcha. And why is that good?
So if you have heart failure, you typically are fluid overloaded. Your heart there's some backup involved, and I won't go into all of the details of that, but the same thing with blood pressure. If you can think of if you're fluid overloaded, you tend to have higher blood pressure and you're more decompensated from a heart failure standpoint. And so it helps to manage those conditions. But they were also finding that it was having some anti-androgen effects. And so one of the main side effects for men who are on spironolactone can be low sex drive and erectile dysfunction and gynecomastia.
Which anytime that you have low sex drive and erectile, like men are very simple creatures. I don't know about you guys, but you tell me, like low sex drive and or ED, you ain't gonna take no damn. What is it called?
That's not a medication you want to take.
No, we ain't gonna take that. We'll deal with. My thing is like, you're not having sex probably because the acne. I'm joking. I know this is a serious matter, but you definitely, if you get to that point and you're taking this medication, you ain't gonna work. Woo-woo.
Well, that being said, too, it's not a medication that we tend to use for men for acne anyway. We do use it for heart failure and for blood pressure issues, especially there's some other indications for spironolactone. Hyperaldosteronism is another one that we won't even go into today, but there are some reasons that men take it. And the other side effect is gynecomastia. So
boobies.
Boobies in men. And so that's why with men, it, sometimes it causes those symptoms. If you're on low enough a dose, it might not. And there's some other medications that we can switch to if that's the case. But for women, it's another story. It can be a very effective androgen blocker. And so it can help
Does
with...
it get low sex drive and all that?
No, for women, it's not as much of an issue. It doesn't cause the same potential side effect. And like we learned in the A4M conference where women have they respond differently to different sex hormones, and certainly testosterone is a part of women's sex drive as well, but there are other hormones that also impact their sex drive. And so it's more, we see a lot of positive effects with the spironolactone in combating the androgen excess. So the hirsutism or the abnormal hair growth that some women, especially in PCOS, might experience, and then the hormonal acne as well.
Gotcha. Wow. Anything else to say about that? So you went through spironolactone. Any other conventional?
Yeah, so birth control pills.
Right. Which is interesting. A lot of people who have acne they'll clear it right on up.
Yeah. And there are certain types of birth control pills that can be more effective, like the Yaz. There are certain subtypes or different types of progestins that that are a part of that dual birth control pill, which has both an estrogen and a progestin that's a synthetic progesterone. And it can be very effective. And something that to me is very frustrating when people talk about hormonal acne, sometimes they're like, well, you were on birth control for your teens and you're on birth control in your early 20s. Now you're off of birth control now. And it's just, that was just masking your acne. You always, you probably always would have had hormonal acne. I don't necessarily believe that's the case. I mean, if you live a certain lifestyle and you're exposed to certain things,
we're lifestyle
then,
people here at Seuss and Scrubs. We're crunchy people, kind of a little bit.
Yeah, maybe there was something in your lifestyle that was, and I think there is definitely a genetic component, but there are probably some things in your lifestyle too that are contributing or were contributing to that as well.
I think about this as a long time ago. Like I'm really digging back, but I used to have really bad growing up in my teenager, really bad back knee. It was bad. And my own younger brother used to make fun of me because I never take my shirt off because I didn't want to expose my back knee or whatever. And so I think about all the things I was doing. I was drinking like two liters a day, like grape soda, orange soda. I'm not talking about the good stuff. I'm talking about like Bilo brand. My younger brother would go, Bilo brand. Well, because we were like, I'm one of 4 kids. And my poor parents, they would spend a fortune and just feed us, right? And we would just consume everything. And so I would just wonder how much of that would impact. Because right now, if I drink like any sodas, or if I drink really, like I know I'm drinking tonight, but I just have this weird outbreak even now. And, I just got a facial, hydrofacial, do it. And they were talking about, it's very common. It's very common to have that, So I'm just trying to relate to what you're saying, like something personal with me, even though I know we're talking about more women and hormones. So you talk about 2 things. You talk about spironolactone. I say it right. Second one was
the oral contraceptive
birth
pills.
controls.
Yeah,
That's right.
the dual
What
OCPs.
what other?
So the other treatment sometimes, especially in the case of ongoing acne, would be not only topical antibiotics, but systemic antibiotics. And so taking a long course of oral antibiotics, and it's not recommended. It's certainly not recommended as the first line therapy. We are learning more and more about how chronic antibiotics can contribute to changing your microbiome, your skin microbiome, your gut microbiome for the negative. It can increase resistance. And so some people get desperate and want to take the low dose antibiotics. And some of the reason why the antibiotics work and they're effective is not necessarily because it's killing the bacteria on the skin, but it's because they have more anti-inflammatory effects. So they're actually inhibiting certain immune responses that your immune system would create in response to that bacteria.
This is probably not a good thing to do long term.
Yeah, and so it's not something, I think it's probably the last resort a lot of times especially for dermatologists or people who try to be more conservative with treatment.
Yeah.
But I mean, there are other topicals, retinoids are thought to be,
Is a boil and acne the same thing?
A boil is more of a pocket of infection. And so a boil is usually a larger version of a pustule. But if it's large enough and it has enough of an infection pocket within it, you usually have to drain it. You usually have to,
like Dr. Pimple Popper. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, we're going on a tangent. But
we are going on a tangent.
All right, so you talk about, is there any other things you want to talk about for treatments on hormonal acne? No? That's fine. Antibiotics was the last one you talked about. That was the last.
Those are the kind of the systemic. The other thing is, I talked about topical retinoids.
I'm paying attention, by the way.
I know you are. You're taking me all over the place, losing my train of thought. The other option, and this is something that's usually for severe cystic acne that is not helped with any of those options, would be a systemic tretinoin, isotretinoin, so Accutane, which is
I know that.
it's the systemic version of kind of like the retinol or retinoids that you would put on your skin, but it has a lot of potential side effects. Can really dry out the skin. You have to monitor labs very closely, monitor liver function, blood counts, because it can be toxic if you're on it for too long. It can cause some problems,
Wow.
but it can be very effective.
Gotcha. Well, gosh, it's going to kill you, but it's going to get rid of your acne. All right. So we talked about the conventional treatments. So the side effects and drawbacks. That's 5. So let's start with, you already hit on spironolactone.
The spironolactone.
There you go. You already hit on that one.
And
birth controls.
We didn't talk about the potential side effects for spironolactone. So
I thought we did. Sorry.
So we talked about it for men, but for women who are on it, who are, who we typically will treat with systemic spironolactone.
Sorry, that was one of our beverages for this evening. This is a recorded date night, so you're having date night with us.
So with spironolactone, as we mentioned, it can lower blood pressure. It's a diuretic, and so a lot of young, healthy females will have low normal blood pressure in general, and so the concern is that maybe it will drop your blood pressure too low. But as long as you are starting slow, you're staying well hydrated, I haven't seen it as a major issue unless we have someone who has really low blood pressure and has issues with like orthostatic hypotension, where they have lightheadedness, they're dizzy or lightheaded, especially with changing positions. And so it's just something to watch. You don't have to treat it to a certain blood pressure. You don't have to tell your patients to monitor their blood pressure all the time and make sure that it's not getting below a certain number.
That was what you were on, right? To get rid of your...
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It zapped it right on up.
It did. It was very effective. And that's the biggest thing to watch out for. It can cause some menstrual irregularities too, which I don't think a lot of people are aware of, or I don't think many people warn their patients about, but because it is an androgen blocker, I have seen it. It personally affected my menstrual cycle, and it was right around the time that the COVID pandemic was happening, and everybody was talking about the COVID vaccine and the implications on fertility, all this stuff that was coming out in the media, and it was very politically charged. And I just so happened to be on spironolactone at the same time, like right when I got the COVID vaccine. And so I was like, what is going on? I didn't know what was causing problems, but it is a known side effect of the spironolactone.
Gotcha. So birth controls, pills, maybe just touch the surface of the issue. So we can probably do the whole episode on birth control.
Yeah. The other thing I was going to mention about the spironolactone as well is that you do not want to be pregnant and continue to take the spironolactone. And so you need to have a conversation with your patients about being on some form of birth control, whether it's like barrier contraception, using condoms, using something to make sure that you're not going to have issues with the fetus, and it's specifically like male fetuses. If you have someone who's on an androgen blocker, then they can have some issues with development. So
Gotcha.
It's something just to be aware of.
Yeah, I remember you saying that in the last or few episodes ago, so that's important. All right, so birth controls, maybe touched a little bit on that.
Yeah, it's controversial, especially with a lot of functional medicine providers or people who treat women for hormonal issues, especially ones that are huge proponents of bioidentical hormones, because birth control, just the method, the oral estrogen intake and the synthetic progesterone or progestin intake is thought to be pro-inflammatory in some cases, and there is that risk of blood clots, and it might be a small risk of blood clots, but I think I've been in practice long enough to see women who are on birth control pills that have had significant DVTs, so deep vein thromboses, clots in their extremities that sometimes can be very dangerous, move to the lungs and cause pulmonary embolism. So the clot moves and can be fatal in some instances. So it's not. And I've also seen some women who've had strokes, and they might have some sort of predisposition to having a clotting disorder, but they considered it as being related to birth control use. So it's not a completely risk-free medication. A lot of people can not tolerate birth control. Birth control can definitely cause lower libido for women and some mood changes. Right. It can be very effective for some, but it definitely comes with some drawbacks.
Right, with some major drawbacks. I mean, they talk about that in the functional medicine conference. I think we probably should do, since you are the hormone doctor, we probably should do a birth control episode for sure. Mm-hmm. Well, actually, I would love to open it. Like, would you allow your child to have birth control? But I'm gonna put a pin in that, and we'll talk about that in the next. So that's 2. So I don't remember all 5, but I do remember
the antibiotics.
Antibiotics, yes.
Yes. So in the short term, using topical antibiotics can sometimes be helpful, typically not for hormonal acne, but more of the...
What's the side effects?
Side effects of antibiotics. So typically the ones that are used are doxycycline or minocycline, and they can cause some gastrointestinal side effects. The biggest concern is that you're killing off the good bacteria with the bad bacteria, right. So it can throw off your microbiome. It can contribute to antibiotic resistance. It can cause some sun sensitivity for some people, that specific class of antibiotics. What else? The downside to taking antibiotics is that it's just not, it might be, you're seeing the anti-inflammatory effects probably of the doxycycline, of the low-dose doxycycline, but once you go off of it, you're not really getting to the root cause of the problem, so it's probably going to end up coming back.
Gotcha. So you said Accutane and one more. I don't remember the 5th one, but Accutane. Do you want to tell the side effects of those?
We mentioned that the Accutane side effects. So the drying out of the skin. It can cause some lab abnormalities, some liver dysfunction, and so you really have to closely monitor labs. And it is actually a medication where you have to be on 2 different forms of birth control while you're taking the systemic Accutane, because it can cause birth defects, some significant birth defects, if you become pregnant while you're taking the medication.
Gotcha. So I feel like a lot of acne medication that you're taking, it may clear your skin, but it has dire effects on, your pregnancy. And then the 5th one, do you remember the 5th one? Or was there a 5th one? I'm not making that up. Spironolactone.
Birth control pills. Systemic. Accutane.
Antibiotics.
We talked about topicals.
Mm-hmm. Yes, that's the one.
And you also can't use the topical retinol or retinoids while pregnant, because there is some systemic absorption, not nearly as much as if you would be on a systemic Accutane, but you still can't absorb, and it can cause birth defects. And the retinoids, they can also help with a lot of other more cosmetic issues. So they can help improve the skin, the appearance of the skin, fine lines and wrinkles, and some of the discoloration that you might see. And so it's a great first line option to use for mild acne, and it's something that is good to continue. It's something more of a, I wouldn't say preventative, but it's more of a maintenance, a topical maintenance. There's also been some recent controversy with using things like topical benzoyl peroxide, which was another big, even over-the-counter topical that we use for acne, not only on the face, but on the body, on the back, backne or body acne. And they did a study to show that it was producing high levels of benzene, or higher levels than they anticipated. Benzene. It's a carcinogen, so something that can potentially cause cancer. And so that's been something big just over the last few weeks, honestly. You've got all of these over-the-counter benzoyl peroxide that people have been using for years and years. Yeah. And there have been some people that say, the study was faulty, and it's not something that you can translate to the typical use, but there are other people that have come back to say that it's, there's still, even with typical use, it's still creating those carcinogens. And so there's a lot of back and forth. I think they're planning on...
Not to cut you off, but we can argue this back and forth, right? So I think that I am going to cut you off because I think it's important to the next few questions. The next few questions is all about what we are here. Suits and Scrubs, we are functional medicine, food is medicine, natural, holistic approaches to problems like this. Like, you went on spironolactone, and it did help, and it probably because your hormones are out of whack after taking your birth control out, right? So the next few ones, as a functional medicine doctor, as you're practicing that and moving into that space, like what lifestyle? Like, number one is what lifestyle factors? How does it look differently? And then I'll say the supplement ones in a second.
Yeah, so lifestyle can definitely have a huge impact. And there was a lot of false information out there for a while saying, eating chocolate can flare your acne, and certain things that weren't really proved by research, but things that we do know now. Eating a highly processed, high simple sugar diet can certainly flare acne. It increases, insulin levels and insulin resistance and inflammation, and so that is certainly something that can increase hormonal acne. The other thing would be there is something behind dairy products, and it specifically can increase levels of IGF-1, which is a type of hormone that can impact hormonal acne. And so those are two things that you can consider cutting out. At least, I know that there's some controversy about, is it a high quality dairy product? Is it a dairy product that that's grass-fed, that hasn't been treated by hormones? Like, does that make a difference? But switching more to plant-based probably can improve.
That's interesting. I have heard that, actually. I have heard plant-based, and so we do believe here. What about resetting your microbiome?
That can certainly help. There was a huge article that came out that mentions the impact of the gut microbiome on acne, and so resetting that can have some positive.
How can someone do that?
By going to our website at suitsandscrubspodcast.com and looking at my free ebook, which helps to reset the gut microbiome, completely free. Gives you just some guidelines on the foods that have prebiotics, natural probiotics, a specific meal plan, and that can certainly help to reset things.
Yeah, we're on the plan now, and it's helping us. I think I'm getting more energy. I'm less tired, and I don't have breakouts usually, so this could a lot of things can happen in your gut, and it could help. So this is another area to reset that for sure. Okay, cool. So we talked about lifestyle choices. What about I know stress management and diet kind of play into that lifestyle. You want to hit on those before I move on to the last two questions? Yeah,
stress management. So having constantly high cortisol levels can cause some acne flares, some hormonal acne flares. So making sure that you're staying on top of stress and finding healthy ways to mitigate that stress. And also, there are some people that believe that managing stress from a supplemental standpoint. So phosphatidylserine is a supplement that some of the functional medicine providers are recommending for people who tend to be chronically high cortisol producers. Ashwagandha is another one. Whether or not those are truly, there aren't clinical studies to show that those might impact acne, but those are some options that people are considering or discussing. Yeah.
Okay. So what about supplements? What supplements can people take to really help them with their hormonal imbalance or reduce acne flare-ups?
So there are a ton out there, and I think that sometimes you can get completely overwhelmed and lost with some of these supplements. I think the ones that I've seen that might actually show some benefit would be a zinc supplement and omega-3 supplements.
Omega-3 like fish oil. Mm-hmm. How do those play into it? That's interesting.
I think omega-3s in general can really impact inflammatory responses. And so maybe that they play a role in just the inflammatory response that causes more of the redness and the cystic acne.
Yeah. Yeah, I did not know that. That's actually really good information. Well, okay, let's go to our final thoughts. So I think, the next question talks about hormonal imbalances, acne, such as gut health and inflammation. I think you hit on that. So any final thoughts besides going to our website and checking out the free guide that you curated specifically? An MD curated this guide to reset your microbiome that can help you potentially manage your acne. It's not the end all be all, but I think it does start there. I think about my acne when I was growing up. I guarantee you it's probably the processed foods I was eating. And you are what you eat. You really are what you eat. And so I think that's important. You eat high processed foods, fat content, all of that. It definitely comes out in your skin. I had a roommate in college. I'll never forget it. He would drink dark sodas. He says, every time I drink dark soda, I get these pimples on my forehead. And he did.
Mm-hmm. Sometimes you mentioned being a teenager and certain times in your life where it's expected, where you have hormonal fluctuations. And so that can be more typical. And if you have a few blemishes, it's more expected. People who are teenagers can definitely have more inflammatory responses, and it can be devastating to not only their physical health. It can cause significant scarring. It can be lifelong. There was a statistic that mentioned that acne in men specifically can be a risk for suicide. And so a lot of people don't realize the psychological impact that having acne can have, especially if it's something that you struggle with for a long period of time. I remember whenever I was dealing with it, I probably struggled with it for a full 6 to 12 months before I got relief, and I didn't want to leave the house.
You're already like that now. You just don't need another reason to do that.
So it can be a significant psychological problem for a lot of people. And the other thing is insurance companies, they consider a lot of topical acne treatments as completely cosmetic. So they won't cover the cost of these treatments. They'll make you pay out of pocket because they think it's just a cosmetic issue. And I think a lot of us know that it's not just a cosmetic issue. It can have long-term effects for people. And so it's unfortunate that these aren't covered by insurance companies. Yeah. But something like spironolactone, it's been around for so long. It's a pretty cheap medication that you can pay for even without insurance. And the other thing I was going to mention too is that topical spironolactone is something that's come out more recently, or at least has gained more attention recently. And it's something that you might not necessarily have the systemic effects for it. So it's something that maybe you consider for your male patients or for female patients who are maybe have lower blood pressure or afraid to take an oral medication and want to try something that is likely to have more local effects than something that's going to cause systemic effects.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's very, very helpful. Yeah. Anything else?
No, I mean, I think it's kind of like beating a dead horse. Lifestyle can definitely carry a lot of the weight, but sometimes, unfortunately, with genetics and, we didn't even mention eliminating endocrine disruptors, but sometimes that can certainly improve hormonal acne as well. And just making sure that you're educated about your different options so that you know what you're getting into, and knowing what medications that might contribute to acne. So even though these IUDs, hormonal IUDs, are supposed to act just locally, I've had plenty of patients who've had these progestin IUDs that have contributed to acne, or this Nexplanon that's contributed to acne.
You're one of those people.
Yeah.
And threw you off balance for 6 to 12 months. And and you sought help. You're like, I got to see somebody. And it took forever to get with the dermatologist when you decided that you were just, I just can't do this anymore. Like, it's really, really bad. And so I don't want to rush through this because part of like our brand, part of who we are, I say endocrine disruptors, like what it is, people. But we talk about it almost every episode here at Seuss and Scrubs. So endocrine disruptors are, can I try?
Yeah.
So there are, it could be, it's like toxins or environmental. We did a whole episode on this. Emily's not happy with that episode. I think we'll go back and do like a different series of that. We're doing this now. We're replacing all of the bad chemicals that absorb into your skin that can actually impact your microbiome. And so if you use Emily's guide, but also that's one part of it. You also got to go through making sure that the chemicals that it can really mess up microbiome. Did I get that correctly?
Yes. I mean, there are several different classes of endocrine disruptors, but some of them can act on hormone receptors and cause negative effects and can throw things off balance. So if you're able to minimize those effects and you're using clean products, and the way that we're going about that is certain apps like the Environmental Working Group app or the Yucca app, or Think Dirty is another app where you can actually look at your different skincare products, household cleaners, to see what kind of rating they have. And if they have a poor rating, they also give you options of an alternative that you can use that might be a little bit cleaner and less likely to impact your overall health.
And I'm adding that into our idea board because endocrine disruptors would be fantastic. I think we talked about that, but I think we should do a spin-off on that one specifically because it's so hot right now. And we have a lot of crunchy moms listening. And, thank you for, getting those, Gaddy, right? So yeah. Okay, anything else? All right, well, thank you guys for joining us for another episode of Seuss and Scrubs. We talk about a little bit of health.
A little bit of wealth.
And a lot of love. Until next time.
He's on the hustle, she's on the grind. There's no time to kill. For saving lives and new deadlines, and there's some holes to fill. With a little health and a little wealth and a lot of love. That's a life that we live. Seuss and Scrubs.